Welcome everyone to tonight's school committee meeting. Matt, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Of course. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is our first meeting since the school year started. We have the consent agenda, minutes from June 7th, 2018, and oath to bills and payroll.
Make a motion to accept the consent agenda as read.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Okay. We have two segments in the meeting for input from interested citizens, one at the beginning of the meeting, one at the end of the meeting. So now is the time if there are any interested citizens that have anything they would like to talk about before the school committee. Just come up to the podium. Okay, seeing none. We'll go right into recognition. Dr. Clenchey?
Sure. First on the list, I'd like to formally welcome Ms. Rebecca Deacon as the new Shaker Lane Assistant Principal. Rebecca started with us in August, and I can say that I've never seen Mrs. Kane happier than she is today. She's actually skipping in the halls, so it was a good thing, and I'm really pleased with what I'm seeing as a superintendent in terms of the team building that's going on. So, welcome, Rebecca. And Michelle, do you want to say a few words, or? Sure.
So Rebecca comes to us from the Worcester Public Schools with 26 years of teaching experience, all at the primary level. And this was very evident on the first day of school when she's welcoming all of the little friends in. She is acclimated beautifully to the school. She's well respected by the staff, knows a lot of parents and students already, and we could not be happier to have her at Shaker Lane and to join our listening community. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
And item 2, custodians. Every year, prior to school starting, as you know, our buildings are used a lot during the summertime. We have a small crew, but yet every year they pull it off, and our schools look great, and it's not easy. This year was especially hard because of the heat and the humidity. When it's humid out, those floors don't dry very fast, and they need 3 coats of wax on them, and on and on and on. We had Camp Tehadawon stay a little longer this year just because of the way the year worked, and it put extra pressure on our staff, but they had Shaker Lane ready to go. So Russell Street School is also used by Case Collaborative during the summertime, and we have hundreds of kids there from other districts and some from our own district. And it's really nice to see how hard they work, and the team effort. They help each other out, and our schools look great. And if you look down when you're walking down the hall, you see that sheen, which I always welcome. So special thanks to all of our custodians. Our technology team, there's a lot that happens during the summertime. They're not just dusting off computers, so to speak. They're checking networks, they're reconfiguring computers, they're ordering supplies in, they're creating opportunities for professional development during the summer. And again, we're lean, but we do incredible things. So again, special thanks to our technology team as well. Our staff welcome back breakfast was great. We always start off with a nice breakfast. Our staff were excited and ready to get back. Excited to greet our kids, our students the next day more correctly. We had a guest speaker that talked about compassion, to start working from a place of care and for self and others. Impressive presenter. She received a standing ovation, and that's how our staff received her. Excited about having her come out and do some workshops in our individual schools, and the whole day focused on social and emotional learning. How do you help students that have experienced trauma in their lives? Is exactly where we needed to go for our next stage of implementation of SEL. So it was again a great start. First day of school, there were no wrinkles in what we were doing, and by the time 2 hours of school was in, it was just like another regular day. It's like we never even had a break over the summer. So I'm really pleased and proud of our startup this year. And student representative report. Nice to see you out tonight.
Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Kriti Sharma. I'm from the high school.
And so today at Shaker Lane, well actually tomorrow, the ribbon cutting ceremony is at 2:30 to celebrate the second grade garden by the Girl Scout troop number 66292. International Dot Day is tomorrow in honor of Peter Reynolds' book, The Dot, and they would like to welcome any school committee members that would like to go. At Russell Street on September 18th, there's Picture Day and the grade 5 instrument pickup. September 20th is the curriculum night, and the Littleton Middle School, the fall sports are underway, and auditions for the fall musical are taking place next week. At the high school, tonight is back to school night, and the next day off that we have is next Wednesday, along with Columbus Day on October 8th. Senior College Planning Night is at 7 p.m. on October 10th. The PSAT exams are coming up, also the homecoming dance with the homecoming football game. And the Littleton Scholarship Trust door-to-door fundraiser drive is on October 14th. And that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, we're going to skip the Littleton High School Senior Project. That'll be on another agenda under presentations. We do have the annual grade 8 field trip to PAC Monadnock in New Hampshire. Which is an out-of-state field trip and requires school committee approval.
Good evening. So I'm here on behalf of the 8th grade team to ask permission for an out-of-state field trip to PAC Monadnock at Miller State Park in New Hampshire. The 8th grade would like to attend this field trip on Friday, October 19th. They choose Miller State Park because they can participate in a hawk count. And there's also a presentation at the summit, and also the Audubon Society is present to display eggs and nests and other items that they have to do with hawk migration. This also, that they like to go at the beginning of the year because it's a nice team building activity for grade 8 students and staff at the beginning of the year. Again, it's for grade 8 on October 19th.
All right, any questions? All right, because it is an out-of-state school trip, it does require school committee approval, so I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the grade 8 PAC Monadnock, New Hampshire field trip for October 19th.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Thank you.
Thank you, and they do promise to come back at a later date to do the presentation.
Excellent.
Good. Just bring up, it's indirectly related to this. So right now, our policy reads that all out-of-state trips require our approval. It's not because of lack of interest, but could we modify that so that we say like within a 60-mile radius?
Yeah, we
of
talked
town?
about that last year.
It's on our list.
Okay.
Oh,
To-
great.
to take a look at
there.
it, yeah.
Just so that the routine ones, because actually they can go to Western Massachusetts, which is much further away.
True.
You know, so it's not really a function of the distance. I think it's a function of,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah, we can
We
certainly-
talked about last year, so we'll get it on the agenda.
Great.
We'll come up with a magic number or range.
All right, under old business, so Dr. Clinch, you talked about how busy all the staff was over the summer. So the school committee generally takes something of a hiatus during the summer break, but we weren't totally idle. We did have one meeting. It's our annual summer retreat where we put a couple items on the agenda and do a little bit deeper dive. We did it on August 23rd. We met for, well, it was actually at least 5 hours, almost 5.5 hours. A couple of things that we did, we had a group discussion on the book entitled The Essential School Board. We each took a chapter and broke it down, and what happened was we kind of started jumping around, and it really just ended up being a really in-depth, robust discussion on how we perceive the school committee functioning in Littleton and working with other boards and being as effective as we possibly could. And I got into a lot of really good stuff, so that was a very good discussion. We did a quick self-evaluation that we definitely were somewhat critical of ourselves, which was good. We talked about capital planning, both some of the immediate things that we're anticipating for this budget cycle, but also how we can plan better for the future and make sure that nothing is sneaking up on us. And Daryl's doing a really good job with the PMBC and facilitating that process. We then talked about budget visioning for the operational budget. And we've definitely made some changes over the last couple of years in the way we go through the process and the way we present information in our general meetings and the way we do the presentation at our annual budget meeting. And we, again, talked about some of that to try to keep that process of evolving that and making it more efficient and informational and transparent. We also had a safety and security update from the police department and talked about some of the ways we've adapted our the training that we do both for the staff and the students. Definitely also made sure that there was an emphasis on age appropriateness. It's not a one-size-fits-all type of solution. Each building has their own way of getting that training done based on the student population that they have. We had a section on an update on social and emotional learning. Dr. Clinch, you want to go into a little more depth about that?
Sure. We're moving forward with social and emotional learning. The first 3 years of our implementation really focused on professional development for our staff, using an adaptive approach rather than a technical approach. The leadership team and myself are very proud of our staff in terms of what they're doing in their classrooms. They're very growth mindset oriented. Strategies, teaching strategies are now more tied into, or consciously tied into the 5 SEL competencies. And what we're doing now is we're taking those 5 SEL competencies via what we call the CASTLE model, and we're having grade level teams, K-8 and department heads in high school, sit down with their staffs, and they're going to tease out skill sets under each competency and then map out what instructional strategies are directly applicable to those skill sets, and also take a look at their classroom management behavior plans. The research is very clear that schools and districts that are forerunners in social and emotional learning understand that most of the social and emotional skill set development occurs within the classroom. So it's via instructional strategies that are coined to incorporate social and emotional strategies, and also the classroom management behavior plan. So we're looking forward to moving ahead with that. We also belong to a think tank. It's called REL with 9 other school districts, and we're teaming together to take a look at best practice across the nation, and also looking at ways to tease out successes. That can be in many ways. We've already incorporated SEL strategies into the teacher evaluation process and also the principal evaluation process. We are considering revamping our report cards one more time and aligning them a little closer to the CASTLE model of core competencies for social and emotional learning. We are also looking at other ways, mostly qualitative ways, to look at our successes and reflect to see what our next direction is. You have received a number of articles from me in terms of social and emotional learning, and it's clear to me, I hope it's clear to you, that social and emotional learning cannot be measured via testing. We do not need to add other tests to what our students already endure within our public school system in Massachusetts and beyond. So the trick is finding or gleaning good data from what we're doing to reflect and move forward. It's a lot easier for people who are in the schools every day or in their classrooms to come up with that information because they see it every day. And our map of meaningful connections is directly tied in to what every teacher does every day. Speaking of our meaningful our map of meaningful connections, so to speak, one addition that we're going to take a look at this year is adding trauma-sensitive education to the social and emotional learning side. It was something that was embedded with the other key areas, but I think it warrants a separate box or entity of its own.
Could you define trauma-sensitive?
Well, we have, just like every school district across our nation, more and more students that are coming to our schools that have unfortunately experienced life-altering events, whether it be abuse, families that are struggling, and as a result, they come to school with learning challenges, social and emotional challenges because of the stress that they're under. There are many things that we do that align with trauma-sensitive education, but there are other things that we still need to consider to enhance what we're doing, to make sure that all of our students are supported in every way that they need to be successful. And we are noticing an increase in the number of students that we have in our district that have been subjected to some type of trauma during their life.
Thank you.
All right, so that was our update on the summer retreat. Anybody have any other comments or questions about that? Going along, personnel update?
Yeah, it's quite a busy page, to say the least. So I'm going to make it simple for you this evening. And when you get down to interpreting this page, in a nutshell, we have 12 teachers that left, and we replaced them with 12 new teachers. We have 3 long-term subs on that list that are pitch hitting for teachers that are out on leave for various reasons. We have 2 new teacher assistants that replaced teacher assistants that left. And we have 2 administrators on that list. We've already introduced Ms. Deacon, and everybody is familiar and knows our new PPS director, Ms. Mears. So that really is what that whole page says. Any questions about the personnel update?
How does that churn rate compare to previous years? Are we about the same, high, low?
Well, it varies depending on the year and how many teachers that we have retired. Last year, or the year before more correctly, we had 15 teachers that we replaced. So we're at 12 this year. The year before, I think we were at 11. So it's within the range. As we continue to have staff turnover, most likely what's going to happen is that turnover will decrease over time. And it just depends on the average age of your staff and the ranges. And we're at that point now where I think in another few years we're going to see a downward trend in terms of the number of staff that are retiring for a while.
All right, any other questions on that? All right. Student enrollment report for the beginning of the year.
Now, if you just want to look at the summary data from October 1st last year to our first count on September 6th, we have 12 fewer students in our district-wide, 6 less school choice students, and our resident students went down by 6 as well. We predicted, and we've had many conversations about our school choice numbers, and as our resident population typically increases, we're not going to be able to take in as many school choice students unless we change our structure, which we very well may down the road, and it may create some opportunities, it may not. It just depends on what happens in those particular grades. No surprise to me. My hope is that we stabilize from year to year and maintain our enrollment, but that's not always going to be the case. And if you look at the 2018 enrollment summary, in grade 12 this year, our seniors, we have 11 school choice students. We typically, on average, take in 5 school choice kindergarten students. We're going to be down another 6, unless we have an extremely small kindergarten class, which at this point in time, we're not predicting a slide in enrollment in kindergarten. I think we're going to stabilize. The current grade 1s, as you can see, was a larger class. That's the best way of putting it, and we had thought that at the time, and it was confirmed this year. Most likely, somewhere down the road, we're going to have another bubble in a class. That's just the way enrollment works in every district. But Right now, we're well-staffed for the student population that we have. Questions?
Yep, I got a couple here. So I'm just looking at last year's enrollment. We had 148 in K kindergarten and transitional, which looks like it turned into 136 as it went to this year,
Mhm.
in terms of basically sort of 12 people moved out.
Right, transit, see. Yeah.
Kind of thing there. How many, so we're down 6. How many unfilled school choice slots do we have? I
None
couldn't
at-
quite pull that out
yeah,
of the
none at
numbers.
kindergarten, let me see here. I would say mostly high school, 5 to 6.
Yeah, because I didn't find the chart of how many we approved at each grade level.
Well, we really only approved kindergarten and
Yeah.
grade 9, 10, and 11.
And then have we, so it looks like we're down 6, so that, how much school choice funds is that gonna translate into in terms of not being
Around 30,000.
30,000?
Mhm.
So those are some of the budget concerns that we have to be cognizant of, because that'll be
Right.
30,000 less in that part of the pot that we can use next year.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that we need to be cognizant of. You know, the good news is that, you know, we have been building up a reserve in that account, so the impact of that 30,000 this year won't be
Right.
felt. And we can massage it out over a couple of years. Really, I feel like, you know, we were at, I'm just scrolling down here. So we were at 83, we're down to 77. You know, the question is, are we gonna go down 5 or 6 every year? So that goes from 77 to 70 to 65, you know, or is it gonna level, as Kelly indicated, if our resident enrollment stabilizes, then we can keep we can stabilize the school choice enrollment as well, if we choose to.
Yeah,
you know?
well, no, that, I kind of bring it up because, you know, Kelly mentioned in terms of our ability next year to support 5 or 6 incoming ones at kindergarten, which is typically where we start seeing them feed the system.
Right.
Kind of thing there, so once we lose them at kindergarten, that will be a structural change in
Correct.
all future.
That would be, but, you know, what we saw is last year we had a bubble,
Yeah.
but this year it's back to what we would expect to see
Yeah.
at 120, which does allow us, you know, to add those 5 we did this year. We'll see how this year plays out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you look at the school choice numbers, sorry, Darryl, from year to year, you can actually predict, if you make the assumption we're not going to take very many students in various grades other than kindergarten. So if we have 10 students exiting, and this year we'll have 11, we'll probably take in 5, so we're going to be down 6 again.
Right.
And if you go down or go up from grade 12, or
Yeah.
down from grade 12 to grade 1, you'll see there are fluctuations. I mean, there's
Yeah.
one year, current grade 7s have 1 school choice student.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, it's more in terms of just looking at, you know, I observe, I think maybe as you get higher in the grades, it's more opportunistic whether you get a school choice in versus in a kindergarten, first grade, where it's like they planned to send their children through our school system. That's what I mean in terms of a structural
Right.
change. I'm not concerned about the specific number yet, I think it's just something to keep on our radar.
Yeah, for sure.
For it.
Yeah, definitely.
And back to even the other things, just telegraphing that message to, you know, to the town's finance people there that, about it. Anyway, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so you said last year kindergarten was a bubble year, so I'm looking at it, that's the 130 residents, right? But we have 6 school choice students there.
right.
So I guess I'm wondering what the criteria, how do you determine whether or not we're allowing students in? Because that,
Well, I mean, it's a good question. We have to make a determination prior to June 30th, and that year, we did not know at that time that we were having more students than we had anticipated. It was a surprise to everybody, and that happens. Again, you have to think of this in a number of ways. First of all, our main premise that we use is we want to make sure that our students have everything they need to be successful. That's our priority. But then you also have to take a look at our revenue flow, because that revenue is not easily replaced. We can't, when you experience a full budget year with us, you're going to be front and center to see the process that we go just to secure enough money to continue to do what we're doing, not add anything. So that revenue stream that we have through school choice is something that's important. Without the school choice increases in the last 6-7 years, this district would look very different than it does today. So I don't want you to underestimate the importance of that revenue stream at this point in time. What we've talked about for many years is decreasing that dependency, but we're not the only players.
Right.
We have to get other players on board with our strategy and our philosophy in this case.
No,
But I think specifically, if I remember, we had, like, from when we talked about the school choice slots to October 1st, I think we had like 15 or more incoming students at Shaker Lane
so,
that year.
yeah.
Right.
I mean, that was my
Yeah.
question, like,
Yeah.
so the decision was made prior to knowing all these students were
Right.
coming.
Right.
So how are we predicting, like, how the students who are coming in, are we
Well,
looking
we-
at the census? And,
We get census
yeah.
data, we have communications with all of the preschools in the area. We just had a lot of move-ins, unexpected move-ins, and, you know, it's a hit and miss. We're very fortunate most years because most of the time the parents will come and see us, so we'll know beforehand. And you know, we still sit down and take a look at that bubble year and say to ourselves, amazing that none of us had that communication even after June 30th to make us aware that we were going to have challenges September 1st. I mean, we ended up hiring a teacher the first week of school because we didn't have that information. So, never 100% accurate.
Right, thank you.
Any thoughts or questions? All right, I mean, looking at it, you know, we've been paying a lot of attention to our enrollment and thinking about how to project it because we've seen the increase in residential development in Littleton. We had a presentation last year that we gave here that I subsequently ended up giving to a couple other different boards that showed a demographic trend of fewer school-age children just, you know, being available because the children of baby boomers are having less children than their parents had. And that's a trend that you can see and measure across Massachusetts. And I think that we can see, at least in a very short term, that some of that is getting played out. You know, we had a big kindergarten class last year. This year's class is much more in line with what we've seen in previous years before the housing growth had accelerated. So hopefully, you know, that trend will hold, but I'm not going to assume it's going to, and I don't think any of us should be assuming that. And I think, as you said, Darryl, when we're dialoguing with the other boards and thinking about the budget and thinking about where we need to be as school committee representatives, this data and information, while it's you know, can calm us down a little bit, it's just another snapshot, and we just need to be cognizant of the fact that it is a snapshot, and make sure that as a community we're planning appropriately and, you know, hedging our bets and being conservative in our estimates so that we don't get caught short and unawares and unable to deal with if the trend is towards 135 versus 125 in kindergarten, then that's got to get dealt with. You know, one thing that I look at and I see here is at Russell Street, we have 129, 134, and 136. You know, that's pretty large. We've had bubbles, and we've massaged those bubble classes through our buildings year by year. But when those grades hit the middle school, that's gonna be 3 really large grades, all in the building at the same time, which we haven't had before. We've had a large grade at a time, but kind of sandwiched in between more normal grades. That looks like that right now, that's the only real, pocket of, 3 in a row like that. The other ones, again, are a little bit more sandwiched and we can manage. So this is a good snapshot. I like to look at it. I also like if you scroll down to the previous year where we're taking a snapshot month by month, which I would like us to keep doing, because it does change throughout the year. People move in, because it's not like they all move in and show up on September 1st. Houses go on the market, houses get sold, families move in, families move out, things happen in people's lives. So I would like us to keep taking a look at this to see how, we're doing. And again, because I think, we don't have to wait till September 1st to say, gee, what happened? Where are we at? Well, we're gonna have a pretty good idea where we're at as the year goes on. So I appreciate this information, so I was gonna look at. I do feel like, we're in a good position. I don't think we're certainly not any worse off than we were last year. As a matter of fact, we have a little bit more breathing room, at least in a couple of grades, so that's good.
Predicting the demographics is exceptionally challenging. I read I think we all read the articles a few years ago that the millennials weren't interested in houses, that apartments were big. Now, the last article I read was, they're concerned that all the millennials now are moving out of the apartments to houses because they want all the things they had when they were growing up as they established their families. But like, Littleton was supposed to be a ghost town by now based on the previous predictions, that millennials don't want houses in the suburbs.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's not strictly population, right? There's other factors.
Yeah.
Desirability of the community, commute, amenities, all kinds of, a lot of the things that, my participation in the Master Plan Implementation Committee, we don't really talk about the number of people moving to Littleton because the population is growing. We know it's not. They're moving because it's a desirable community to live in, not least of all because of the strength of the school system. And it is something as a community that we need to be very, very aware of as we plan and deal with, what we're doing, but also what society at large is, and who knows, right?
And in terms of the patterns that, we see, if a community doesn't have new growth in terms of building, inevitably, unless there's some factor that is unique, the school population typically goes down. When you look at cities, there's a concept called redistricting, which is not fun. Neighborhoods are born, they flourish as the houses get older. There are fewer students available. People hang on to their houses, they don't move. And before you know it, you have people that are shipped from 7 to 10 miles to the schools in the older districts. And then you get to the point, what I've experienced in my career is you can maybe buy a house in an older district and your children are 2 blocks away from a school and they don't attend that school because it's already has been filled by students in a district 7 or 10 miles away. It's just something that it's just part of what happens with enrollment and town and city populations, various subdivisions.
All right. Next on the agenda item is high school signalization. So this is another chapter in the ongoing saga of the community of Littleton trying to get a traffic signal at the entrance to the high school. This has been a multi-year effort. It is a state highway, King Street there, Route 2A 110, so we can't just do whatever we want to do. It's governed by the Mass Department of Transportation, the Mass DOT. They have a very, very regimented process for evaluating where they put signals. There are multiple criteria that they measure, and if you meet certain thresholds, they will either approve of a signal or not. In previous years, we have not met the thresholds, and we've been denied the opportunity to put a light there. But as a community, we've had a lot of parents and our public safety officials feeling like this is a very real issue for us. You know, it might not meet the Mass DOT thresholds, but for the level of concern that we have, it meets our threshold every day. We asked them to take another look, and they were very amenable to that. They went back through the metrics. They put the traffic counters down there. They also, we had asked if they would put one of those flashing signs that tells you, hey, the speed limit's this is how fast you're going. They put a temporary one there. They were very gracious. They did that very quickly when we asked them to do that, to just kind of help deal with the situation in the immediate sense. They presented the results of their measurements, and we missed out on the first two metrics, but we barely skated in on the third one. There were enough, I can't remember exactly how they phrased it, we can make those documents available on the website, but there are a couple of peak periods where there's enough traffic to warrant the use of a light. They basically told us that they're really bending the way they typically evaluate this and almost making an exception for us, because they do recognize that the volume, but also the nature of the population of drivers that come out of there, they definitely recognize that, and we appreciate that. And they basically said that they think they can approve a signal there. What they said was their estimate was that it would be about $200,000 to do it, because there is some existing infrastructure there. There's a blinking yellow light and an arm and a pole, so they can basically leverage off of that. This isn't a totally new build. So it sounds like that's a lot, but that's actually not that much for putting a signal in. They have fleshed out that estimate, and the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator have that information. The goal is to put it on an article on the warrant for the October town meeting. The Finance Committee and the town finance team feels like there is money available that was earmarked for other purposes. I think some of it is the snow removal funding that we didn't use all of. And this is not an atypical exercise for us. This is one of the reasons why we have fall town meeting. There's bills of previous years, and there's some monies that sometimes don't get spent, and we look for opportunities to spend it. And the reason that the town is paying for it, even though this would be a Mass DOT job and they would do the work, is that they basically intimated to us that if we were able to fund it, it would make it even easier for them to effectively make this exception for us. So it's getting debated now. It's going to be on, I believe it will be on the warrant in October. So it requires a town meeting vote. It will still take some time. We will go through another school year, this current school year, without it. But there's a very real possibility that we could have it by the beginning of the next school year, if things go well. Could get kicked down the road again, because Mass DOT is the Mass DOT, right? They have projects across the Commonwealth. This would be a very tiny project for them. So there's funding and priority and pipeline and all those kinds of things that need to get addressed. But in summary, the good news is that it looks like there's a very much higher probability that this could come to fruition than we've seen as we've gone through this exercise multiple
Several
times.
times.
Yes.
For many years.
Four or 5 years. Yeah. So I consider this good news. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves because again, we are dealing with the Mass DOT. There is a funding mechanism, a funding requirement. There is town meeting approval, but we are moving the process forward. And we'll have, because it is going to be on fall town meeting, or we're trying to get it there, we'll be talking about it more both here and in our joint meetings with the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen.
I think it's also important to mention that if we're successful in getting this traffic light, it's not going to be an old-fashioned traffic light where every 2 or 3 minutes it's going to turn red. It will be responsive to peak time, so it's not going to be holding up traffic if there's no reason to stop traffic for entry and exit from our high school. So it's the best of both worlds. we've said many times and stated publicly that we're concerned about student citizen safety during the beginning of school and the end of the school day. It's very difficult to get onto that intersection. So I'm thrilled that we're that much closer, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that we'll be victorious and hopefully have a light finished within the next year.
I think the other thing to keep in mind is that we, as a community, are managing that traffic flow at those peak times, about 15 or 20 minutes. We have an effective traffic light. It used to be named Millie, and it's not named Millie anymore. We now have a uniformed officer that's in the intersection. So in terms of the traffic flow is what it is, right? It's busy through that intersection, and it's difficult for people that are just making their way down King Street. It's difficult, there's no question about it. Traffic is stopped to allow traffic flow out of the driveway and into the driveway those 2 times of the day. What the light will do is not require a devoted resource and a person standing literally in the middle of the road dealing with that. And you think about all the trucks that go through there because it is a commercial area right down the road. So it will help to not have a person there. But the other thing is there are events where we're thinking Monday through Friday in the morning and the afternoon, but when sports events are getting out, or Indian Hill's getting out, or dance recitals are getting out, that's a very busy campus. We use it all year round. There are definitely Saturdays and Sundays or nights where when that traffic signal can sense that there is traffic coming down the driveway and just stop the oncoming traffic to allow people to pull out safely, it'll make a big difference. We're going to avoid an accident that we've been very fortunate to avoid so far, and really have been, bucking the odds to this point. So it is good news, but there is more to be getting on, and people just need to realize it's not going to happen overnight. Even if it was approved today, it would still take a while before we're going to see it. So we're going to kind of have to continue to live with the current situation, but hopefully we'll have even better news as we get a little farther down the road.
Will it include a crossing light?
Well, we have those in there, right? We have the crosswalk, and it has so the pedestrians can stop traffic.
That was their concession last time we talked,
Right.
was they'd install a crosswalk.
With lights.
Okay.
Right. But I'm sure they will make sure that the whole thing is integrated, because it is a crosswalk. And thinking about that, it's one thing to have and we could decide as a community that we're going to have a crossing guard, which is different than someone. Millie directed traffic and helped the kids cross through the intersection when they were there. That doesn't mean just because we have a traffic light, we wouldn't still have someone at the, when kids are coming in and out of the pedestrian students are coming in and out, that we wouldn't say, oh, no, we're going to put a staff person down there or a volunteer or somebody like that for that particular purpose. That's a really good point. We need to keep that in mind.
But our usage of that intersection with foot traffic is minimal. There are not that many students that are crossing that road. So, and we've been monitoring that for years. And as Mike pointed out, Billy was really there to stop traffic when students were crossing. And unfortunately, it became more than that. And she ended up directing traffic just to keep things safe. So I guess as we move into the next item, Chief Bernard and I met this summer, and through a number of deliberations came to the conclusion that we didn't feel comfortable having Millie at that high school intersection anymore. It's just, traffic flow is too great during peak times. Really, again, she's directing traffic, and she really should have been just stopping traffic for pedestrians crossing. So that's problematic in itself if you go beyond what I'm saying. We did have a clear indication that we have a lot of pedestrian crossing at Shaker Lane School, and as a result we felt this was a great opportunity to reconfigure, and now Millie has a new home, so to speak, down at Shaker Lane, and things are going very well. We're thankful that our police department rearranged their schedules and made sure that they had details out there to help us out during the morning and the afternoon. So it worked out well. This whole change in plan, though, of course, is really as a result of us feeling somewhat optimistic that there will be a traffic light there within a year. And I haven't heard anything but positive about having Millie down at Shaker Lane. I see some nods over at the other end of the table there. Is that's the case?
Nice to see her, yeah.
Good.
It's nice to see her every morning, or
Great.
when I go in.
Make sure somebody every now and again brings her a coffee or a hot chocolate.
And it's
Especially
so
when
much
the temperatures
safer.
start dipping.
Yeah, so much safer there now.
Good. That's good to hear.
All right. Summary of school committee presentations.
And we created a draft for you at the end of the packet, or second from the last packet. And it's not everything that we do, but we wanted to give you an idea and map out some of the major things that we do. What we've tried to diligently be aware of is trying to have our meetings run around 2 hours. There was a time when, we were overzealous and we had so much to say and so much to present that we were having meetings 3.5 hours. And by the time 2 hours is over, we're probably ready to do something different. So we're trying really hard to keep it within that 2 hour range. Every now and again, maybe 2.5, but we've been very successful in the past year, maybe year and a half. So we're kind of designed this template accordingly. But that doesn't mean this is written in stone. As we said at our retreat, if there are areas of curiosity, we certainly would add them to the agenda and try to balance the overall agenda so that we stay within that time frame. I know Darryl was probably happy to see the question, or I put a question mark on it, December 13th, Next Generation District and School Accountability Systems. That is a question mark, but when Jerry Lynn and I sat down and talked about this, we have a new accountability system that was released by the department in the summer, and we're still trying to figure out what it all means. So you very well might be interested in hearing our interpretation when we finally figure it all out. But we will not do a repeat presentation from year to year. It's pretty dry, to say the least.
Right on the edge of your seat.
We tried. Didn't work.
Are there any questions or comments on the proposed presentation schedule? This isn't our agenda in total for these meetings. Obviously, these are the presentations that we expect to get from the administration. It is fluid. It will change. There'll be additions, deletions, shuffling. And there will obviously be other business on each agenda along with the presentations. All right.
So if you have ideas, let Mike and I know and we can fit them in.
One thing that I saw, we get the MASC emails that go through our inbox, was some school committees will devote particular meetings and not do business, like, budget updates and things like that, and they'll pick a subject, kind of somewhat along the lines of what we're doing in the August retreat. So that's another thing we can conceivably think about is,
Sure.
if there's some particular subject that we think would be engaging both to us and the community, we can pick a meeting where that's what we're gonna do, and prepare accordingly. And obviously, I think having like a month or more of lead time to make sure that we can fill a whole meeting and make it meaningful, or we could pick two things and, do an hour, 15 minutes each, something along those lines. So that's another way we could think about doing it as well.
We have no problem filling the meeting.
Yeah. Well, that was your point that you made, right? We were filling it a little bit too much in terms of volume, maybe not necessarily meaningful volume. But. All right, we're skating right along. We are at the second portion of the meeting for input from interested citizens. Nope. Okay. We're going to go into subcommittee reports. PMBC.
PMBC. Been busy with the various other town projects going on, primarily trying to also continue trying to get a handle on future facility needs there. They brought up something, I'll need to make sure that it gets passed to the administration so it gets on a list. They said something about the dock bumpers at one of the schools need to be replaced. And I said, that's an example of something that
Loaded up.
is really not the expertise of our staff to know that those types of things there, just in terms of emphasizing whether we can get help in terms of the things there. One of the new members, Ed Mullen, mentioned something that goes on in a different town in terms of some split shared responsibilities of how they defined other town positions there. He had some suggestions that I'm not quite exactly familiar with what he was referring to, but Anthony was there and was going to use that to maybe incorporate into some of the new job descriptions that they're writing for some of the positions in the town side they need to that they're replacing or updating there. There's one issue going, I'm going to call it an issue there, one item going on there. I've been working with the PMBC on accommodating the request to get the cost estimate for the pole vault piece there, pending some donations to do that work. I'm a little concerned in terms of we fast-tracked that project through in order to try to take advantage of the things there. However, I gotta say I'm not happy with how this whole process is working, to the point that I pretty much told them that if things didn't get straightened out by Monday, I was gonna have on the agenda pulling our support for that project. It was direction was coming from multiple areas. I, as the school committee member, wasn't even aware of some of the direction being provided to the contractor that they were getting underway. I think that creates an intolerable position to put me into, as well as I'm concerned about the process that the outside organization is using to almost circumvent going through the school committee here. So I guess I'm saying is I'm accommodating it this time, but I don't think I'm going to be as flexible next time.
So to catch people
on
up,
that.
what we're talking about is the track does not have a pole vault pit. When we were originally designing it, there was a pole vault pit in the drawings, and it was sited outside the track going towards the highway, so it's like a runway type thing, so it was its own little piece. We didn't build it because at the time, the level of track that we competed in the Mid-Wachusett League, which is our athletic league, the schools our size didn't do pole vaulting. And that had been true for like decades. Well, we've moved up to a higher level. We're in like Mid-Wach C now, and they do pole vault. So what we've been doing is the kids, and this is very common because only a few kids pole vault, boys and girls, even at the schools that have pole vaulting. It's not like the sprints where they'll run heats all afternoon to get kids a chance to run. It's a very specialized sport. So kids will train outside of the school. A lot of times there are pole vault clubs that kids can go train year round in. And when it's time to compete for Littleton, what they've done is the schools that we compete with that have pole vault pits, if we're hosting a meet, the day before the meet, the pole vault kids will go to that school, do the event with their opponents, and then they come back and do the rest of the meet and add those scores in, and it takes care of itself. So we've been managing, I think they've had pole vault now for 3 seasons, two or three seasons, no more than that. And now, obviously, we feel like we're going to be pole vaulting for a while in the sense that we will stay in Mid-Wach C. We've been, for several years, we kind of bumped up. Every 2 years, the Mid-Wachusett League realigns and reevaluates the student populations. And, we were kind of a bubble school for a few years. We would move up, we move down, we move up, we move down. Well, Mike Lynn is pretty confident we are not going to move down anymore. That's based on somewhat on us, but also relative to the other schools that are in the D and C. So we think pole vaulting is here to stay. So the question is obviously asking the kids to train outside and then having them compete away from home. We have a home meet. It's not ideal. It's functional, but not ideal. So the track coach is trying to come up with a solution. We think we have some entities that will donate some money. The question is what's the real cost to do it correctly? Because remember when I started the conversation, the original drawings had the pole vault runway outside the current track. well, that's expensive, especially now that the whole project is done. It would have been less expensive to do it when we were, had the bulldozers out here and we're clearing land. That's not, well, I wouldn't say it's feasible, it could still be done, but there's a cost associated with that. It's conceivable we could fit it inside the track, but it would mean that they call them the D areas, right? At each end where they do discus and shot put, they do the triple jump and the long jump. They could fit it in there. The problem is that there are some concessions that have to be made. The runway would extend out over the sprinting area or the running area of the track so that they could make it long enough. And it still wouldn't be regulation length. It would be long enough for a high school student to effectively pole vault because they don't need as much runway as a collegiate level athlete or certainly an Olympic athlete. But we don't know that, and I think this is what the point Darryl was trying to make relative to process. We're not trying to fast track this and make short-term decisions and that turn out to be poor decisions if there are alternatives. We need to weigh all the alternatives. And if we ultimately decide that that's what we're going to do, we're going to make these concessions to make it work, we'll know why. Right, relative to cost and effort and everything else.
My problems from a process perspective is, part of the donation is opportunistic, and I want to try to be flexible on that, but this was not identified during the budget build process that is even on the planning horizon there. So, here I am in June, kind of struck by, well, we need to get this done by, October 1st so we get it under contract. And it's like, if it became that much of a priority, where was that in our process there? The cost implications of I need to make sure that we're having it done the way the district needs it, not just to match the funding opportunity that might present itself, because that may not cover what we want as a district there. And then the other part of it is, once we start asking the PMBC to start putting projects into motion, we have committed the school to those projects. And it hadn't come before us as a board to prioritize as a budget. So like I said, I'm trying to be flexible here and get things in place, but I'm getting very concerned about the process, and I really don't want to see this process happen again this way there.
Totally agreeable. I mean, the goal obviously is to try to avoid another season.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if we have to avoid we have to go one more season with the current way we do it, even though it's not ideal, that's, as these things go, when we think about how long it took us to build the track, how long it took us to build alumni, it's always unfortunate for the classes that graduate before we realize the vision of what we're striving for, but that's a reality of the situation. And then that goes beyond athletic facilities and can go into buildings and other things too. So as a community, you're right, I think we need to make sure that while, I appreciate the track coach, because he's really done a lot of work in terms of trying to make it as financially, painless as possible, and he thinks it's within his grasp. That's to his credit, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that we're going to short circuit every other aspect of our process just because of that. We need to be careful.
Yeah, and since we don't have the cost estimates nor the fundraising estimates available, we'll be ending up committing for the delta.
Correct.
And I'm just not prepared to do that at this point. Here.
Without the right information.
Right.
Yeah.
And at this point in time, Darryl, we've provided the scope of the project meets our expectations. We're willing to have them go ahead and do a design study.
Yeah, no,
It's
and
for
again, there was
$4,500.
some miscommunications on that, and statement of work, scope of works was issued without me even
Right.
having a chance to confirm that the desires of the school committee were, or me as the representative, were reflected based on our discussions. And that caused some friction internally within the PMBC and myself.
That's why we put you there. Represent our interests.
Yeah.
So if those design studies go ahead, then the next step would be for us to get that information as a school committee and have a presentation from who's heading this project, and then together make a decision on what's feasible or not, and how much funding raising do they have planned, and is it realistic? And then we're gonna have to throw it in the hopper.
Yep.
And, you know, decide what priority it falls under in terms of all of our projects.
Any questions or comments on that? All right, you good? That it for
Yep,
this?
just a longer PMBC update
Yeah.
than
No,
usual.
that's fine. No, no. You know, this happened, a lot of this was transpiring in that fallow season where we're not really
Yep.
meeting all that often. So I appreciate you, you know, meeting during the summer and carrying the water on that. And I think we all agree that you're doing a good job with that. All right, Budget Subcommittee, we have not started to meet. We do have a joint meeting on September 24th. I have there's a planning board meeting that night that I'm supposed to go to as a member of the MPIC. Or do we all, does anyone else, can you guys go to the joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen?
Yeah, I just added it to my calendar.
Okay,
I think
thank
I'm
you.
around.
And I think the agenda is setting budget priorities, which is, you know,
Yeah, and
Generic.
I'll probably, you know, make sure that we still have the same understanding that we have a required services budget.
Yes, that's
Right.
like so.
There, not, and it's independent of staffing.
Okay. And then we'll start to set our calendar for budget subcommittee meetings and get that off the ground. All right, policy subcommittee?
The food service meal policy is once again before you. We've deferred it a couple of times, took a look at it one time, and this evening what I would like us to do is because it's been a while to take a look at this policy and consider a first reading. I don't think I would recommend a second reading at this time. This policy is virtually a replica of the suggested policy from MASC. And I'm sure I don't need to refresh your memories, but when we read through the policy the first time, if you go to the second page, under delinquent accounts, collections, we have begun a discussion in terms of what would be appropriate for this policy. What is our philosophical belief in terms of, I mean, I'm assuming we all believe that a food service debt is a parent debt, a student debt, and we need to make sure our policies coincide with our philosophy, but at the same time, we do incur deficits, and Steve, I believe you have the deficit amount for the last school year. What is it?
$6,200.
$6,200, which really needs to be absorbed within our budget. So you have to take into account all those factors, and from there, design or devise some wording that it goes hand in hand with our philosophy, at the same time keep us fiscally fluid, so to speak, so that we're not borrowing from other budget lines to pay for deficits. So that's the challenge that we have before us this evening. We're not alone in this. I've probably read about 3 or 4 school districts that are having the same deliberations as we speak. So.
I unfortunately was unable to catch the previous meetings where you had talked about this here. I have some comments and questions on, if you don't mind if I lead off
Okay.
there. So Steve, you said 6,200 was the deficit due to delinquencies there. What was our total underrun in the food services last year?
Last year was about $24,000.
So a third of it.
Right.
And before you go any further, can I just, so the first paragraph of the whole policy says that food services is a self-supporting entity within the district. That's not true anymore. So can we change that to strives to be a self-supporting entity? Right, I mean, the reality is that, you know, because it changes to the requirements, nutritional guideline requirements, the cost of food, et cetera, you know, short of raising our price, which wouldn't necessarily solve the problem because of supply and demand curve and pricing, et cetera, you know, and we haven't really raised the prices to try to close that deficit. We don't think that's appropriate, but we are running at a deficit, and which is fine relative to, I mean, that's,
Yep.
we're working it.
Yeah.
But the point is we have subsidized it through the operating budget.
Yeah, and
To a much less extent than.
Correct, a
than
couple of
we-
years ago it was zero, 4 or 5 years ago it was zero.
Right.
3 or 4 years ago, we added $10,000 to help that. 2 years ago, I think we increased that to 20,000 within the appropriated budget to
Yeah.
support that program.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to know the difference on the, so, you know, there, because that drives the future discussions about what our fee structure is, but that's not for tonight.
Right.
There. There's a couple of paragraph, you know, on the first page of it, there, the last paragraph, I'm really not sure that that's a policy matter. That seems to be more of an implementation, unless by policy we're saying that we're gonna have computerized point-of-sale terminals, which
Well, we do.
we have them, but that's not our policy that you
Right.
have them.
Correct.
Correct.
Kind of thing there.
Could be if you wanted, but it's.
So, you know, so I'd recommend that we delete that. The previous paragraph, the parents may pay for meals in advance. Again, we cover that in the handbook, don't we, in terms of the payment approaches?
Yes, we do.
Kind of thing there. So again, the further details available on the website, I think is fine. I got a question on, do we mail notices weekly? What's our frequency of?
We email.
There, again, so.
Email monthly, I
I want to be
believe.
careful by policy that we're going to do
Right.
weekly mailings on accounts. Just want to review that language to what workload we're putting on ourselves for that.
Good point.
For that. I mean, I get the email is pretty convenient, but if you've got people that you're mailing weekly, physical mail,
Yeah.
you know, our processing costs.
I actually did an analysis. I was looking into a situation, and it was in reference to an outstanding balance. And when I looked at the email trace, it was about every 2 weeks, so bi-monthly.
Yeah.
And when the amount started to get up there, then they started getting
Yeah.
personalized
But
letters, so.
if we put it by policy weekly, you
Right,
are
yes.
obligated to do it weekly.
Exactly. Yep.
There. Let me see. Well, under the section on refunds, I'm gonna just tick through my notes here if you don't mind.
Okay.
There. Siblings account or donate to a student in need. Would we have people donate to specific students or donate to the business office for working with people that may have delinquency problems?
Could I just back up, Darryl, for a
Sure.
minute? I'm not seeing weekly in
The
this
copy I
policy.
have on the second sentence on the second page.
Oh, I'm on the first page. so-
Yep, sorry. Second line on the second page.
Oh, that's actually redundant. It shouldn't even be in there.
Okay.
They already commit to not that language, but language about how notification is gonna occur on the first page.
Yeah, so anyway, it's a
Okay.
consistency
Okay.
type of thing there. Now I'm down to the refunds, last line there. And again, would we have people donating to specifics, designated to a specific student, or just releasing it back to the business office? It's more of a, you know, process check question.
I mean, does it have to be a student in need, or can I just give it to my friend?
Yeah, I guess we'll have to discuss that.
Yeah, so I just
It's
flagged
their
that.
money.
I just-
Transfer it to a sibling, we can transfer it to anybody effectively, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But then that's just part of, people are allowed to transfer it. This in-need part there, I get concerned about whether people are personally identifying
Exactly.
people
Yep.
in need.
I
and make
agree.
that seems to be something that should not be
Mhm.
Right.
in our policy aspect of it there. I am 100% uncomfortable with the first paragraph in the delinquent accounts section there. I don't believe we should be penalizing the students for parent behavior, which the parents are consumers, have responsibility for payment of the bills.
Okay.
Penalizing the students for their lack of action, it's just not consistent with the philosophies that we've been, you know, going with
And I
there.
honestly don't believe that's gonna recoup us any money to make up for that loss either. So I'm.
Certainly not on a material basis.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm
Right.
in line with you there.
The MASC, I think ours varied a little bit from what the I have the MASC version here, let me just make sure I cross-reference what I'm
Was
looking
it just
at.
taken rid
This is-
of the website? That's what I thought.
Yeah, the MASC opening paragraph of that section is failure of a parent or guardian to maintain reasonably current accounts may result in referral to the superintendent's office. I think that's the way they lead into the, into that. I'm much more comfortable with that type of language there. I would, I guess, if necessary, I guess I need input from the superintendent and the administration on relative to, collection problems there. Part of me says I'd like the district to get out of that part of the business. Do we want to authorize the superintendent to turn post-graduation delinquent accounts over to a collection piece, and if we recoup something, we recoup something? But I don't know what the desire is in that area there. I think we've probably got to curb our costs in terms of how much time and energy we're spending on that.
I mean,
We do have a responsibility, though, to make sure that the accounts are collected.
We already have a process in place that we do utilize collection agencies. But you need to, and you probably understand already, but as soon as you go to a collection agency, you lose half of your revenue right off the bat.
Yep.
So it's a matter of recouping realistically 25%, maybe 30%. It's better than nothing, but, go ahead.
If I can just add, I mean, if you look at the balances, I mean, they're 20, 30, 40, 10, they're not that much, but it's the volume that adds up. I mean, there's a few accounts that are a couple $100s, and we try to work with the principals and figure out what's going on.
Sorry, can I
but-
interrupt you for 1 second? So we've branched basically into two different concepts here, right? One is, do we punish the students if they have delinquent accounts? Let's finish that conversation. Then we can get into a conversation about, as a district, and I don't necessarily feel that I'm willing to have that discussion right now, to an extent. I think we need some more information to have a fully informed discussion on what's our policy about collection, because it goes beyond the meals, right? We charge for buses, student activity fees, athletic fees. There are any number of things that we could conceivably say, hey, we feel like we need to go after it, or we don't, wherever our threshold is.
Yeah, so this may not be the right place to cover that. It's just that when the next one that says ensure there's appropriate and effective procedures in place, which really leads into, what is that on there. But anyway, I'd recommend going more towards the opening paragraph that the MASC has in that versus the language that we currently have in this draft.
Jen, I think you said you agree with
Oh,
that?
yeah, absolutely.
I also agree.
Yep.
Eric, what was your thought?
And then I'm more than willing to not even address it, until a later discussion about how do we deal with delinquent accounts in general.
I think we have consensus on the first paragraph, okay? So you have that direction, so when we go to the second reading, we'll see what it looks like. I would argue that the second paragraph, the idea of what we would do about collections of delinquent accounts should come out of this policy altogether, because that concept is not specific to school lunches. That, maybe we have a separate policy about how we deal with collections for anything that we unfortunately have to charge fees for.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, no, that, I can see that. So this whole section wouldn't necessarily be called delinquent accounts
Correct.
collection. This would be really just focusing on that last paragraph that's in that section, which is, we are letting parents know that if the superintendent is seeing persistent money issues
Correct.
related to the accounts, that it may cause them to refer it to other services to follow up. I'm comfortable with that part of it being in there.
So the second paragraph under
If
delinquent
a
is still in,
student's
right?
without meal money on a consistent basis,
The last one.
The
Last paragraph.
The last paragraph.
So take out the one before.
And then change the title of the section, because it's no longer about delinquent accounts collections. It's got a different meaning at this point. I don't know for what.
Just a matter of procedure. Are they automated emails that go out through the
Through the
POS
system?
system?
No, I think they're manually sent out by the food service director. I don't believe it's an automated system.
Because, so I personally, my daughter had an issue with an account. I never signed up for a school account because I sent packed lunches. So I never made an account. She apparently was still getting meals. So I never received a notice saying that I owed money because I had never set up an account until way
You had a balance.
after school, right.
So do we need to talk to you
So-
after this meeting about your accounts?
No, it's all taken care of. But my question is, do parents know before it gets to a certain point? Or if they haven't signed up for an account, is there a way of them knowing?
Good question.
Let me find out, I'll have to get back to you, I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
I don't have an answer
The
to
exact
that one.
procedures, and I don't wanna speculate.
I mean, our expectation is that if a student wants a meal, we give them a meal.
Right,
So,
which I completely
I'm not-
agree with.
I'm not sure how that connects with
Right.
what you're saying.
No,
We're gonna have to
I'm
look
ju-
into that.
No, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
is there a way to let the parents know that
Right.
the child is getting a meal?
Was your daughter receiving the emails?
Nobody was probably because.
I don't,
Yeah,
there was no account, there was
Right, there was
no.
no account. She couldn't have set up her own account. Well, I take
Well,
that
I-
back. Kids can definitely set up their own. Every resource will that regard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have Steve look into
Yeah.
that, because that is
Let me
a
get,
good
I'm not,
question.
I have an idea, but I wanna make sure I convey the right information, so.
You good, Daryl?
Yep, no, I just wanted, like I said, I had had missed the previous meetings and provided some verbal feedback to Kelly, but I wanted to make sure that I did it in
Or
the
could you have
context of the meeting.
any other comments about other than the ones we've already talked about?
No.
Yeah, Jen?
I was just going to get a little nitpicky in the beginning of the, like, introduction paragraph. And I don't really know if this is typically, like, there's like this weird narrative in the beginning of a lot of policies, but I don't understand why we need to have something saying, however, unpaid meal charges place a large financial burden on the school district, ... Like, even this whole section, it's just, it doesn't seem like that needs to be in the policy, as Daryl was mentioning about other parts. So, if we could just,
Yeah, I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
I mean, we've done that in the past, when we were going through these policies, when the policy manual, before it got Daryl Bakered, it had a lot of these types of things, and that we quite often
Yeah.
called them,
Right.
called that type of verbiage.
And I think, just looking, because a school district can take the policy that they are not subsidizing out of the operating budget, the school lunch. We've not operated that way. So if a district is firm on that part of the policy, that becomes very significant to
Yeah.
telegraph to people. The people that aren't paying it is gonna cause increases in school
Yeah.
lunches.
But is
We've been
the-
absorbing it, so
yeah, but is the handbook the place for that?
Well,
Or
no,
the- I'm
it's a
sorry, the
it's a policy decision as to
is-
whether we're gonna allow the
Right.
school lunch go into deficit.
Right, but,
So
Just
I don't
describing-
disagree about
yeah.
striking it, but I
Yeah.
just give that context in terms of why it may be in there from their boilerplate.
I'm actually thinking that, so starting with however and ending at district is a part that we don't need, but saying food services is self-supporting is okay with me to keep, except that we were talking about they're not necessarily self-supporting either. So I'm not saying strike the entire sentence even.
Well, you might as well, because
But you might, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't, it is kind of out of context if you
Right.
Yeah.
you isolate the last half of the sentence, so.
And then I would take out the tail end of the last sentence of the paragraph. Right, the purpose of this policy is to
Yeah.
ensure compliance with federal reporting requirements of the USDA Child Nutrition Program, period.
Yeah.
Right, and strike out the oversight and accountability for the collection of outstanding student meal balances, just strike that. And the other two sentences are fine, right? That's our policy.
A lot of ink on this one.
Not so cut and dry.
Yeah, this is good. This is good, so we'll bring it back if there are no other suggestions, next meeting with the changes, and ask for a second reading.
All right, everybody good? All right, thank you. All right, is there any other business before the school committee? We don't, what, go ahead.
So while we're in policy, and maybe I would like us to maybe think about this over the course of the year, not necessarily for immediate action there. It's a little difficult to. We have a lot of organizations raising funds on behalf of the schools, and we've had quite an increase in 503Cs or whatever outside organizations there. However, many times their purpose is presented to the public that they're doing this for the schools. So I often get questions like, so how much have they got put aside for this? And the financial reporting we get from the 503Cs does not include that level of data there, as well as the leadership of a 503 changes, their priorities of what they want to use those funds can change for, which may not be what people originally had made donations to or other pieces there. I'd like us to consider thinking about a policy that if organizations are raising funds on behalf of the schools for projects, that we establish revolving accounts, that we require them to make an annual donation into that revolving account, so that it pulls it for the dedicated purpose that was stated for the fundraising there on it. I'd like just to I don't have it all worked out in terms of what that would look like, but I'd like to just put it out there for us to be thinking about that over time here.
I agree. I mean, we had the Littleton Athletic Boosters Association, who have existed for decades, and they tend to spend as they go. They're making constant contributions to the athletic program throughout the year. Having said that, we don't really get an accounting, like the athletic director is very much aware of how much money and what it's going towards, but from our perspective. But since then, we've added, the band has a booster club. I believe drama now has money that comes in from various activities around the drama productions.
The alumni field.
The alumni field obviously is a big one. So I think you're right. I think that we're at a point now as an organization where we think we need to put more checks and balances and governance in place. Obviously, we're not the only district. I would ask the administration and I think that we should think about it this year, because now's as good a time as any. We don't have to do it in the next 4 weeks, but it might be a goal of ours to let's throughout the year, let's see if we can get, by the end of the year, let's see if we can come up with a policy. Because I think it is going to require input from the organizations, public input. I'd like the administration to do some research on what other districts, how they go ahead and execute on governance of this respect.
And what brought it to light also is there's some charitable organizations that are required to expend their funds by the end of the year, so there's no carryover, in terms of, so they get the money, and by law, of their organization, it has to be spent, or there's personal tax implications for the person that set it up. The 503s, you know, they can retain the funds, and like I said, as the organizations change, how they want to spend those funds may not meet what we thought we had been supporting their, it's not an issue, but it's a concern.
Right, and the idea is to come up with the framework so that we don't get ourselves backed into a corner, or these people who are doing really good work, and we're very happy and very appreciative of the work that they're doing, but at the same time, we don't want them to get caught out either, especially when you talk about those transitions that are inevitable when they move from one group which always happens.
Yep.
They are separate entities. I can't even say there's an arm-length connection to the school district. I think we need to remember that as well when we're trying to get a better handle on what that money is used. From a legal standpoint, they can comply or they don't have to comply. It's up to us whether we want to take their money or not. So I think you need to understand the limitations of
But it also,
of what we can and cannot do.
Oh, absolutely, we're not trying to run their show
Right.
by any stretch of the imagination.
however, as we facilitate their access to the schools for fundraising
Right.
and other pieces there, to the public, they may be separate entities. It's indistinguishable that it's not a school-driven support activity.
Right. But we just need to keep that in mind as we're trying to coin a policy that
Yep.
It has to
Well,
be enforceable.
yeah.
Whatever it is.
Yep.
There's policy, right, and then there's procedures.
Right.
So I'm looking at it, yes, we're gonna come up with a policy, but I also think by virtue of letting the policy lead out, we're then going to have a dialogue about the procedure with each group about what the expectations are, because as Daryl just said, if their expectations don't align with ours as closely as maybe both parties had assumed, then we need to know that, and then
Right.
that may determine certain decision-making,
Right.
you know.
Well, I'm in full support of
Yeah,
this. I just
yeah.
want to point out the
Right.
limitations.
No,
Yeah,
well,
no,
it's gonna be complicated. I think Dale's right. I think now's the time to start, because it's gonna take a year. This isn't gonna get done in one fell swoop by any stretch of the imagination. Matter of fact, it might be something that we try, realize we made a couple of mistakes or forgot about something, and then, we'll have to, but let's get it off the ground and get it going, and we'll figure it out.
I had looked a little bit into it. I expect that this is gonna be a challenging one to put together. That's why I wanted to kind of bring it up
Yeah.
right at the beginning here.
All right. Anything else? We don't need an executive session. I did ask Dr. Clenchey, and Daryl brought it up before the meeting started. We need to release our executive session meetings. We had a lot of executive sessions over the last year when we were in contract negotiation with the LEA. So we will do that in short order and get those out.
Should have them ready for next meeting.
Actually, next meeting I won't be here.
Oh, so the meeting after that.
Yeah, let's do it at the meeting after that, okay? Specifically, Erica won't be voting on those because she wasn't on the committee anyway. Let's make sure we have the four of us who can do it. Is everybody else good for 2 weeks from now?
Yep.
For attendance?
Yep.
All right, because I won't be here.
As far as I know right
Okay. All right, good. All right, well, if there's no other business, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
now. Motion to adjourn.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, LCTV.